Today's project is the narrow neck bottle, and this is two examples. So the one on the right is a long neck narrow neck bottle, and that's really a Ceramics 2 project. What's required for this project is more like the one on the left, and you can see that you've got directional changes. So from the bottom, the pot flares out and then it goes over the shoulder, gets collared in to the extreme, and then it must have some kind of a lip. Now you can see on this particular pot, the lip is not straight, and sometimes that looks really good. The one on the right, however, the lip is nice and straight, and of course that would be maybe normal, but sometimes you can get away with a little bit of unusual shapes, and that one happens to look quite good. That could have been trimmed off and straightened up, but it actually looks quite nice that way. So let's continue now and with the demonstration of how to make this form the narrow neck bottle. You could also call this a bud vase. That would be another name for this piece. So I have a pound of clay all ready to go. This is actually just over a pound, maybe 500 grams, something like that. So it's the same as everything else. Attach the clay, and you can see I did a really sloppy job of attaching the clay, but that's okay because I'm just going to push this right on center. Like I've said many times, it always looks really ugly at this point, but you know, that starts to change really fast. The first time you bring it back down, it's starting to get on center, but it's got a lot of texture and swirly appearance on the outside. That goes away pretty quickly when you go a second time up and down. So we'll do that. Now, this particular shape, or I guess I should say any shape that is going to be dramatically collared, you really need to do a good job of wedging of the clay. And that includes when you're doing this, if you can feel some like rough spots, I can see there's a thinning spot right here where the clay has a slightly different texture. So you need to work all of that out for a shape that's going to be extremely collared, and this is one that's going to be extremely collared. So we're just going to continue with the centering, and I'm feeling the clay to feel, you know, does it have lumps and bumps in it? If so, keep going with the centering. The walls on an extremely collared piece need to be very uniform without lumps and bumps. So that means really good wedging, really good centering. Let's call this good. Looks good to me. Okay, so we're going to go ahead with the plunge. And when I'm doing this plunge, I can feel some imperfect stuff. I've gone by some different textures that I can feel in there, and that's really not optimal, but that's fine. We're going to work right past those things. So it's just the same. You find your depth and then stretch it out a little bit. Go in and flatten that bottom. And once again, this is a going up shape. I'm going to just fix up the lip just a little bit. So this is a going up shape, so I typically will just bring it back first. You get at least a ½ inch of height when you do that, so I like to do that. It's always easier to go up from an inward sloping shape than from an outward sloping shape. So that's why I do this. So now we do our pull, and I don't mind having a really narrow base on a bottle like this, so I'm not going to worry about kind of extreme pulling. I really want to dig deep, in other words, get all that clay to come up from the bottom. And I don't care if it ends up kind of narrowing the base a little bit, because I'm going to stretch it and make an attractive looking bottle with a very narrow base. Keep that dried up on the inside, and we'll go in for our second pull. All right, going in the right direction. I'm going to try a third pull. Now with the bottle, since we're going to do a very extreme collaring to make a neck, I'd like to not ever make this wider than necessary. Maybe a little bit difficult to see on the video because size and shape is a little tough here, but this is narrower than I was when I did the closed form shape. And that's because I'm bringing this really quite a ways in. Don't do extra work, right? Just don't bring it out too far in the first place is what I'm saying. So let me dry this up in the bottom. I can just barely reach this, and there is a thing called a sponge on a stick that I use quite often. Actually have one right here, and that can be used to dry this up. I want to make sure that it's soft first. So if you have a really deep pot, you can just use a sponge on a stick to make sure that that is nice and dry on the inside. So that's a cool tool. And so, I think I have enough height. I'm ready to do the shaping. And the first kind of shaping that I typically do is the pre-trim. So let's do that. Take my knife and pre-trim the base. Needle tool underneath that. And then just pick that piece off. Oh, look there, it didn't come off in one that time. Like I said before, sometimes it comes off in 2 pieces or 6 pieces. As long as it all comes off and looks clean, that's fine. All right, so in this shape, I am going to want to stretch and make a belly at the bottom, but I don't want to have the top any wider than necessary before I begin that. So I'm going to start to collar this down, and then earlier I called this tool my bottle tool, and that's what it really is. The thin side of this bottle tool is really good for getting down deep inside of pots, stretching the walls when you have a fairly narrow opening at the top. So you see I've only got less than an inch of width here, so I can get this down into something that's fairly narrow. So let's go ahead and narrow it down a little bit in preparation for making the spout or the neck. As with the closed form lidded box, when you begin this collaring, there is quite often some folding that takes place because the material is trying to compress on itself, and sometimes it folds. With careful enough movements, really small bites each time, you can control that. The other factors that influence that are if you've made your wall thickness too thin, it's very difficult to get the material to compress back on itself. So you're kind of better off to leave it thick, These are, I would call these normal wall thickness, so, you know, it's okay. All right, I forgot where I was. Look, we've got to continue the collaring. And so I'm going to start just a little bit lower. And we want to get this something like an inch. And notice that the collaring goes all the way up. That's really important that you take it all the way up to and past the lip. If you don't, and actually on the last one or two collars, we won't take it all the way up because we want to get a flare, but that's a very specific motion. So the next thing I want to do is I want to start stretching the sidewalls. So here's where we see what the bottle tool actually can do. Clean it off a little bit. And now it's just a rib, but it's a very long, thin rib. So I'm going to start just below the shoulder, and I'm going to stretch those walls a little bit. I'm going to speed the wheel up just a little bit. It's important to get revolutions whenever you're making changes. In other words, you want the pot to go around enough times so that the change you're putting in is expressed everywhere evenly. Now it's starting to look like a bottle. Very nice. Okay. I think I can go more extreme on the base. It's possible to be foolish and go too far, but just looking at this, I think based on the amount of clay that's here, this can definitely go further. But I don't want to bring it up any higher. I want all of this material remaining for my neck. Okay, so we'll go in and rib a little bit more. I'm going to start right at the shoulder again. Get a little bit of speed on this. I think you can see it moving. I like to get all the way down to the bottom and then kind of press out on the sidewalls down low. You can really, yeah, I like that shape. I like it to start going out right from the base. Just looks nice. Okay, now that's starting to really look like a bottle. All right, so we've got the bottom part of the bottle formed. It's pre-trimmed and stretched, and now we just have to finish the neck. So right now, this neck is about 1.5 inches open. My goal is to take it down to 1/2 inch. So it means I've got quite a ways further to go. If you just look at the amount of clay that's here, there's not enough to make a long neck. If I wanted to make a long neck, I should have started the collaring down lower. So this is enough clay to make a short neck. You know, maybe I'll get 3/4 to 1 inch of neck before the flare starts. The other thing that is important, I think you can maybe see there's some kind of slip on the outside of the pot. You can take a metal rib and just kind of clean that up a little bit, and what that does is see how wet that is? You're getting all that wetness off, and that's good. It helps when you're trying to get a little bit of height, especially on this shoulder area. You don't want that to be wet, because if this is wet, it's going to fall. So I dried that up a little bit, but now, you know, just like this, put water on, take it off. I've got water on my fingers, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to take another bite on this with the collaring. And again, it's important to go all the way up with your collaring. See, I'm making that go straight up. Eventually I'm going to flare it, but now I'm down to a 1 inch inside diameter, getting very close. I can actually heal up this lip a little bit just using the back of my fingertip. But I think I may end up cutting this off. We'll see how ragged it looks in the end. You can sponge it as well, but it looks like this one would benefit from a little bit of a trim. But we're not done with the collaring, so let's see if we can finish that. We have to kind of dig low here. All right, it's looking great. I'm just going to use my sponge to dry up that shoulder now. I see a lot of water standing on there, and you really have to keep that dry to prevent slumping. Okay, I think I can collar this. It's about 3/4 of an inch now. I can collar it at least one more time. I want to get a nice narrow neck and then have it come up and flare. So that means that on this collaring, I'm not going to take it all the way. Now, I'm going to end up possibly with a ragged edge. I will have to trim that, and we'll just see how that goes. So I'm going to come down right to the bottom of the collared area. Pick up a little speed here. This is an operation that's better done at a higher rotational speed, but you have to be careful with that. Okay, so that's actually almost there. I'll call that 5/8 of an inch now. I'm going to do one more collaring operation. I'm going to try to bring this down low and really kind of accentuate the neck. And when I bring this up to the top, I'm not going to come all the way with it because I want to leave a little bit of a flare there. Starting to look pretty good. So it's okay to use tools on this to kind of keep the shape the way you want it. And like I said, the metal rib really takes that slip off the surface and it maintains some strength. Oh, I kind of like that little ridge I put on there. That's actually can be a design feature if you like. I think you can see that ridge better now. Okay, I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to collar this just a little bit more. But before I do, I'm going to trim this, and I'm going to try not to trim too much off, just maybe less than 1/4 of an inch. Just trying to remove what's not straight and pretty. So another tiny little calamari ring. Now you can see that the shape is very close to the finished shape. Sometimes I take the back of my needle tool and just use that. It's almost like a rib, but it's not really a rib, it's just a stick. So you can really get a nice shape to your to the top. Looks a little extreme. Okay, now I'm going to clean this up with my sponge a little bit and make sure that everything is nice and straight. I think this can actually stretch up just a little bit more. And that's going to look even better. It's a little subjective. You're just trying to make it look nice, and whatever looks nice to you is fine. This is what looks nice to me. Very gentle sponge action to try to remove irregularities without distorting things. And there's even a little thing on the inside that I just want to see if I can get out. I'm not sure what that was, but it's gone. Okay, so that is the basic shape for the bottle. I'm just looking at this on the video now. I'm not sure that I'm completely happy with the way that shoulder looks. And if I want to change it a little bit, I think that a metal rib can alter that. So let me do this. Trying to make it look less triangular and more ball-like. And I think that's a little bit of an improvement. Yeah, not bad. Okay, so that is the narrow neck bottle, also known as a bud vase. Thanks for watching.